We enter into the final week of Razorback spring football, and there are a lot of updates to get into, especially talking about Barry Odom and Kendall Briles and their decision to stay at the University of Arkansas. This is the Locked On Razorbacks podcast.
You are Locked On Razorbacks, your daily podcast on the Arkansas Razorbacks. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Welcome into the Locked On Razorbacks podcast. I am your host, John Neighbors. I am also the host of Out of Bounds. You can catch every weekday afternoon from 1 to 4 on 103.7 The Buzz and 103.7thebuzz.com. Hope everybody had a wonderful weekend. I was unable to record yesterday because I was playing in the old Buzz golf tournament. I didn't hit them well, so don't even ask. But it was kind of an all-day thing, and between waking up so early and golfing and then doing the radio show and then going and working out and everything, it was just a very long and tiresome day that I know none of you care about and none of you have sympathy for me, but I'm just explaining it to you as it is. But either way, appreciate everybody listening in, and we're going to kind of dive into a lot more football because basketball is kind of slowed down a little bit for the most part, and baseball has its things too, but everybody, of course, continues to want to hear about football and how everything's going in that regard. And I think that there's a lot of things that's happened, especially over the past few days, that were extremely interesting. And I will dive into specifically me going to the spring, I won't call it the spring practice or spring scrimmage. We'll call it, spring scrimmage. We'll say that. This past Saturday, which was only open to the media, and then some of the things from the press conference, and of course, this upcoming week, and is Spring Fest, Spring Game, Hog Fest, whatever it is it's called. It's the big scrimmage that's open to the media and to the public and to everybody that wants to go to be able to go. So a few things that have been happening, nothing too juicy or dramatic, but I do believe one of the biggest storylines have been from the coordinators that we got to meet with this past Saturday in Barry Odom and Kendall Briles. Now, we don't get a lot of access to those guys during the football season. In fact, none is given. It's only through the head coach. It's the Sam Pittman thing, something that he learned from Kirby Smart. I mean, it doesn't bother me, but whenever you do get an opportunity to talk to some of these coordinators, it's always really interesting because, again, the rarity of being able to talk to them is kind of small. So I thought it was really fascinating just to kind of hear him talking about spring practice, individual players, and all those things too. But the thing that stood out the most was about the reasons, or at least the story of these guys staying at the University of Arkansas. Because as we know, Barry Odom, Kendall Briles, opportunities definitely have come calling since they've been at Arkansas. Opportunities to be coordinators at bigger schools, using quotation marks, opportunities to become possibly head coaches at smaller schools or whatever. The opportunities have been there, but they've turned them down and they've stayed at Arkansas. And that was definitely a storyline. And I got some clips that, because I don't want to just, go along with whatever they said and just you trust me. You can hear it from the horse's mouth. And I'm going to play both clips from both coaches. And I apologize for this Kendall Briles clip. It's a little hot on the mic. I don't know why it came out that way, so it's a little loud. So just a heads up there. But you can still understand it. And then Tom Murphy asked the question to him, and then you hear Kendall Briles' answer. So here's what he had to say about staying at Arkansas.
Year 3 in this system and why he's back. You've had opportunities. What's the appeal for you to be here in season 3?
Head football coach Sam Pittman, working for him. University of Arkansas, state of Arkansas, and there's not a ton of loyalty in college football as far as coaching, but I felt, loyal to Coach Pittman, giving me the opportunity to be here. And, obviously you got to look at everything from a career standpoint and what do you think is best. And I felt like I made the right move staying here and being with the guys and the coaches and the coaching staff and being able to keep all that intact is pretty unique. A lot of times you don't get that. And, the players, having KJ back, it'd have been really, really hard to look at KJ and tell him that I wasn't going to be here, just because I love the kid and respect him so much and want him to be able to achieve his goals. So being here for the players and the state and, raising a family here, there's not a better place to do that. So absolutely love it here and hope I can stay a long time.
So really interesting comments there from Kendall Briles when talking about it. And we'll play Barry Odom's in a little bit, but just reacting to Kendall Briles' comments. I know that a lot of this can be considered coach speak and talk and, just saying, well, I love being here. My family loves being here, all that stuff. But when you start to see the evidence behind it, it starts to give it a little bit of more credibility. When you start to see that these coordinators have stayed here at Arkansas and there's proof of them staying here at Arkansas, and then you hear the reasons as to why, it starts to actually make you believe that they're telling the truth, which I'm not saying that, a lot of coaches lie. I'm just saying that we know the profession, we know how it goes. We know that coach speak is a real thing, but I don't think you're getting that from Kendall Briles when he talks about what he did, especially when the first remark he said was Coach Sam Pittman. He says, the culture that he's built here is just incredible. And it's one that he loves being a part of. And the players and, of course, getting KJ Jefferson back, which is a all SEC caliber quarterback, is always extremely helpful too. So that's always a big thing. But all that being said, it's almost just like if you're a Razorback fan, a breath of fresh air, a nice relief to know that your head coach, Sam Pittman, is not just like some sort of dictator, that the success only runs through him. Like, it's not just where it's like if you cut the head off of the chicken, it would be like a Bobby Petrino situation where he rules through fear, through intimidation, through that way with players and coaches and all of that, to where it's really hard for high quality coordinators and assistant coaches to want to work with them because they have to put up with so much nonsense. Sam Pittman's not that way. But Sam Pittman is also a guy that's not trying to be everyone's best friend either. Like, he's not just a guy that's just, golly shucks. He may come off of that as in his press conferences and everything, but if you watch him in his practices, he's not that way. He's an extremely tough guy who understands coaching and understands football and has an expectation that he demands out of everybody. And if you're not going to deliver on that expectation, then you need to get out. Like, it's quite a cool thing to see, where he struck such a great balance in being able to be a likable guy that's easy to work with and work for, easy to play for, easy to like, but being a great head coach and building something that people choose to believe in. Not because there's no other opportunities, not because there's no other options, but it's because they see the writing on the wall, they see the reality that they're in, and they understand that there is something being specially built here in Arkansas. And it's because of the culture Sam Pittman builds. And, Kendall Briles, say what you want about the guy. I know he went on through so much stupid criticism last year. Like, and I'm not saying all Razorback fans were that way, but there was a lot of people that would just wreck him all the time on play calling, all this stuff. And here's my thing about offensive coordinators, especially like Kendall Briles. Look at the numbers. Look at the numbers. Arkansas, they did not turn the ball over at all last year. They scored like 35 points a game. They had an extremely effective passing and rushing attack, and extremely balanced. And they did it all with doing the number one toughest schedule in all the country. Shut up. Kendall Briles is one of the most elite offensive coordinators in the country. That's a fact. Ask anybody outside the state of Arkansas that knows anything about football, knows anything about coaching, and they will tell you the same thing. Kendall Briles is elite. Okay? And he being elite means he's going to have other opportunities. And even if it was to be a coordinator at some other major school or some other, Power 5 school that's got a college football playoff appearance or whatever it may be, he feels that at Arkansas, it's something great that's being built, enough to where he feels strongly about staying here, where his family's at, and continuing to raise a family, whatever it may be. He's doing it all right here, right now at Arkansas because of what Sam Pittman has instilled into the program, the toughness and the belief that they can accomplish great things. And you hear it right there. Like, that was the first thing he said was Sam Pittman. Like, if you're a Razorback fan, that's got to make you feel really good. It's got to make you feel really good about the continuing building of the Razorback football program. And we're just heading into year 3 under Sam Pittman. Year 3. We haven't even gone, he's only had one spring practice besides this one. It was last year. Like the quick turnaround, it does not happen in football very often, folks. Now, I know Arkansas's got a lot of work to do, and I know that there's a lot of things that they got to take advantage of. Like, I get all of that, and I'm not trying to disregard that or discredit that. But these turnarounds just don't happen where you go from the laughing stock in the bottom of the barrel in all of college football, and then in 2 years, where one of those years was a COVID year, in both years you had the most difficult schedule in all of college football, that you have turned your program around so much that not only did you finish third in the toughest division in all of college football last year, but people are talking about you maybe being a dark horse of competing for an SEC West title here in the next few seasons. That does not happen in football. Like Nick Saban's the only exception to the rule, where I remember him taking over an Alabama program. Year one goes 6-6, and then boom, 12-0 the next year. But even then, he didn't have to take over a dumpster fire of a program. People see what Sam Pittman is building. Kendall Briles understands it, and he chooses to be a part of it. We'll talk about Barry Odom's comments here in just a second. But first, BetOnline.net is the number one source for all your betting stats and sports info. And you can find all the latest sports developments, league reviews, and news, including this year's baseball playoffs when they're going to be coming up. Also basketball playoffs, too, in the NBA. But listen, BetOnline is your continued source for all your sports wagering information and live betting to playoffs and esports and so much more. So head to the website today or use your mobile device to learn more about the trends and actions over at betonline.net, where the game starts.
You are Locked On Razorbacks, your daily podcast on the Arkansas Razorbacks, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
All right, so continuing our conversation and discussing some of the quotes, at least what we had from Kendall Briles, and talking about why he decided to stay at Arkansas. Let's hear from Barry Odom. He's the defensive coordinator at Arkansas. He's been here for 3 seasons. They're entering into his 3rd year. And also a coordinator that when Sam Pittman hired him, it was like, okay, this is a big-time hire. He's a guy that is a household name. That's been a head coach before at a major university. I thought shouldn't have been fired from Missouri, personally, but he was. And he has taken the job at Arkansas by storm and has done a phenomenal job. And he was asked the same question to Kendall Briles, staying here and why you stayed here and what is it about Arkansas that makes you enjoy being here. And here's what he had to say.
I mean, if your players play really well, you're going to have opportunities every year. That's not going to change. My thought process on having an opportunity to come back with this group another year was, above everything, the most important thing. Number one, the culture that Sam Pittman has every day in our working environment, you can't beat it. I've not worked that many places, but you can't tell me it's better somewhere else. I think we've got a great administrative support. The fan base is the best I've ever seen. It's unbelievable. I believe with the team that we have, the way we've been able to recruit, my family is really happy here. I'm excited and happy to be here. I think we can achieve great success here. So all those things combined, if there's an opportunity for me to be I had opportunities as, in a couple of things this offseason to be a head coach again. I'm not going to go take a head coaching position again just to say I did it. I don't need that. My ego doesn't need it. I don't need it. I'm having as fun as I've ever had coaching, being here. And I don't know if fun has anything to do with it, but I enjoy getting up and going to work every day. The student athletes that I've got a chance to coach right now, they're bought in. They like to play ball. They like to practice. They like to compete. They're doing a great job academically. It's a fun group to be around. Someday, some year, if a head coaching opportunity presents itself, then I may go make a run at it. But it's got to be the right fit with the right alignment. And I feel like Arkansas is a special place. I feel like it is, for me and my family and what we have going on defensively and program-wise, it's the best job in the country for me right now.
It appears. I mean, how do you not want to give that guy a hug if you're a Razorback fan after hearing that? Let's go up to Barry Odom, give him a hug, and just say thank you. Because, listen, not to go like he said a lot of similar things to what we said talked about with Kendall Briles, so we don't go dive into that. But here's the thing that why Razorback fans and I think the state of Arkansas can be able to relate so much to when comments are made by coaches who aren't from here, who have no connection here or anything like that. They're just coaching here, and they buy into the culture. They buy into the fit that they have here in Arkansas, and they hear comments like that, especially when talking about the fan base, talk about the state, talk about where it's at, and all that stuff. Let's be honest. Arkansas as a state constantly is either forgotten or made fun of from people outside the state. Always. People who don't know anything about Razorback football or Razorback athletics will constantly say, well, you're just Arkansas. There's limitations to what you can do. You don't belong in the SEC. You need to leave somewhere else. They say things that are stupid and completely and totally ignorant because, again, they don't know anything about Arkansas. I can't tell you how many people I heard during the Chad Morris years at the end and then during the coaching carousel that everyone was talking about how Arkansas is just, they're getting surpassed. The entire SEC and entire college football landscape has passed them by. They're irrelevant. It's the worst job, one of the worst jobs in Power 5, yada, 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 all this crap. And it's, again, comes from people who never even been here and don't know what we're capable of here in this state. And it was extremely infuriating to have to combat that. And so when you hear coaches that come in here, again, having no connection to Arkansas other than the fact that this is where they're coaching at, and hearing these things and hearing them say these things, it almost gives you a little extra merit to what you've been trying to tell people and what you've been trying to say for so long, and trying to almost in a way convince people, rightfully or wrongfully, convince people that there is more to this state than what the stereotype goes along with it too. Like, I'm sorry, but I know people have this obsession with Ole Miss because of whatever Hugh Freeze or Lane Kiffin and all this stuff and like the Southern thing and all that. I know that people have that obsession. I know people have an obsession with the Auburn, Alabama dynamic with the Iron Bowl and everything. I know everybody has an obsession with LSU because of what they've brought to the table and their kind of their culture and what they do things to. I know that everyone has an obsession with Texas A&M because they have more money than God and they just flout it like all the time, and they do all these different things and they got some of the weirdest chants, but they have a huge fan base. Like, I know people get obsessed with all of those things, and that's fine. Whatever, do whatever you want to do. But just because Arkansas doesn't have that thing that people become obsessed about and think it's so cool and trendy and fun and all that stuff does not make them some sort of lesser program or a program that nobody wants to be a part of. Or it's just like, okay, well, yeah, you're still Arkansas. You're still dead last in a lot of things. Nobody wants to go to Arkansas. No one takes vacations to Arkansas. Like, it's just stupid stuff. And so when you have coaches that start understanding and start realizing that, hey, this is something that's different. Like, because I promise you, Kendall Briles and Barry Odom probably had a mindset of what they thought about Arkansas before they took the job. Like, I bet you anything that those guys did. And especially when Sam Pittman came calling, it may have been one of those things that they liked Sam Pittman and they liked being in the SEC, and they, respected Sam Pittman, what he was doing and all that. So they were like, okay, maybe they took the job because of Sam Pittman, and that's fine. I'm not trying to, denounce that. But it sounds like once they took the job under Sam Pittman and they got here at Arkansas and they saw what it is here, what it's about here, how great Fayetteville and Northwest Arkansas is to live in, how the facilities are top notch, how the funding and the spending is incredible, how the support system and the fan base is second to none, like all those things. When they started to realize that, I believe that they just started to say, this isn't just about playing and coaching with Sam Pittman too. This is also about Arkansas and being a great program to be a part of. Now, a lot of that's because of Sam Pittman and what he's built, but a lot of it is because of what the fans and the support and the money and all that stuff brings to the table too. More so than probably anybody even realizes or understands. These guys are in the long haul because they love Sam Pittman. That is true. But Sam Pittman being in Arkansas is such a perfect fit that even when these two coordinators end up moving on, which they eventually will, and honestly, I would love that for them, because if they go on to a bigger job to be a head coach of some major program or whatever, that means that they had a high level of success here at Arkansas. That's what you want. But when you hear from these guys, and you hear what they built it with Sam Pittman at Arkansas, if and when those guys move on, you know you're going to have coordinators and other coaches chomping at the bit to be able to possibly be a part of the program as well. And I think people are starting to come around in Arkansas and realizing that this just isn't some old crapperware. Like, this isn't some old program that's living in the past that has no way of being relevant again, especially when you're seeing in every other sport across the board, Arkansas is not only being successful in it, but in a lot of them being elite level status. You're talking about basketball. You're talking about baseball. You're talking about softball. You know, you're talking about all these sports that are so highly successful that people pay attention, and it helps, and it's a camaraderie. And I'll say this, call it homerism, then we'll end the segment on this, but there is not a better athletic program in the country right now than Arkansas. Find me one. Find me a better athletic program, a healthier athletic program than what Arkansas has right now across the board. You can't. You can't. You can't. These guys know. These guys know they want to be a part of it. And that's why, if you're a Razorback fan, you can't help but be excited about the continuation and the growth of Razorback football under Sam Pittman. Get to the final segment here on the other side of the break. Stay with us.
You are Locked On Razorbacks, your daily podcast on the Arkansas Razorbacks, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Okay, so final segment of the Locked On Razorbacks podcast. I don't really have a whole lot to add as far as anything goes as, you know, newsworthy or anything like that. I did want to make a comment, though, about the Razorback baseball team. And they lost their first series in a long time in SEC play against Florida over the weekend. And, you know, some people have made comments about it. And to me, baseball happens, you know, like some people were just like upset and frustrated. My whole thing is like, dude, you don't understand how rare it was last year to win all 10 SEC series. Like, even the World Series teams. Like, last year, Mississippi State won the World Series and got swept by Arkansas. Like, baseball, like, that's just an anomaly. It's unfortunate it ended early for Arkansas, but it shows you how rare it is. And even in the SEC, you're going to lose series. It's going to happen. And unfortunately, Arkansas wasn't able to take care of business. And, you know, that's nothing against them, or like all of a sudden, oh, gee, now they're not going to be very competitive, or, oh, man, now they're not going to be very good, or anything like that. It's just something that happens in baseball. So I'm not too worried. I know they got a doubleheader today against UAPB, and then they got a Thursday, Friday, Saturday series against LSU in Baum-Walker Stadium. Bounce back in that one, though. Like, you need to win your home series this year for sure if you're Arkansas. You got Ole Miss coming up later. You got Vanderbilt coming up later. Obviously, LSU here. You got to win those series. And then you got a couple of other ones on the road. I think Bama and Auburn. You both have to play them on the road. And they're actually, I wouldn't say they're good, but maybe they're better than what people thought before the season started. So you got a few more opportunities here, but don't freak out over losing to Florida. Again, Florida's a good, I know that you feel like you're a better team, but again, baseball happens. Continuing to figure out the pitching. Connor Nolan's been awesome, been elite. I think Jackson Wiggins, he had a bad outing, but that's more the exception to the rule. I don't think that that's something that, you know, has been a common place for him or anything like that. And just keep swinging the bats, getting those hits, making those things happen. So, I don't think it's anything to get crazy about or anything to look down upon or anything like that. It's just the way baseball goes sometimes. So just keep that in mind. But either way, appreciate everybody listening into Locked On Razorbacks podcast. Be sure to like and subscribe to the podcast on iTunes or on Google Play. And also on YouTube. Yeah, YouTube. Yeah, go to our YouTube page. You can see my face every single day, which is a lot of fun. I'm sure it is. People are really nice in the comments, too, for the most part. So, yeah, check that out. Subscribe to that. Like this video. Hit that little bell notification thing on the top so that way you can be notified anytime that we post a video on Locked On Razorbacks podcast. And for any questions, comments, concerns, you can get after me on Twitter at BuzzJohnNeighbors. Same sports show, same sports channel tomorrow afternoon. Have a great day, everybody. We'll see you.